Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Sanjukta Nathan, your host for today's last session of the evening. I welcome you to the ninth edition of Eastern India's largest digital summit, eEngage 2020, organized by Public Relations Society of India, Kolkata chapter. On the theme of Communication Next with the tag Conversations the Digital Way. Public Relations Society of India is a 63-year-old national association public relations practitioners and communication specialists in India. PRSI, in its ninth edition of Engage, is featuring 27 speakers who are deliberating on developments in the industry through various panel discussions and opportunities shaping the strategies in future communications, reputation management, and technical innovations. Time now to introduce you to the final session for today's PR Tomorrow Strategy for 2021. Introducing our moderator for the panel discussion, Mr. Subhash Mohanty, Vice Chairman of Public Relations Society of India, Kolkata chapter. Subhash Mohanty is a communication and brand strategist, his key focus area being CSR communication. A former brand journalist, he has served two of the premier business newspapers, namely Business Standard and Economic Times. I now invite Subhash Mohanty to take the session forward. I sincerely believe that this session will be equally exciting and engaging. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Mohanty.
Thank you, Sanjukta. Thank you for your introduction. It was a very well articulated introduction, I must say. Welcome to day 2 of eEngage, Eastern India's premier seminar on digital communication, and for the first time on the digital platform. This is our second and closing session of the day, being viewed nationally and internationally. The subject this evening is PR Tomorrow, Strategy for 2021. Our agenda this evening is both simple and difficult. We look at a possible communication strategy for the year ahead and beyond. We are coming close on what should be described as one of the most tumultuous periods of the decade, and we are possibly moving tentatively ahead to a new year, which appears grounded in confusion and uncertainty. The pandemic, which has nearly obliterated 2020 from our activity calendar, makes the task twice as difficult to look ahead to the next session. There are challenges to political will, challenges to policy making, to restart the economy, and to bolster the country's financial structure, besides challenges to rein in social turmoil that has engulfed us from all sides. There is a lack of confidence and trust among the initiated and abounding cynicism at the grassroots level. There is yet another challenge, especially for communication professionals whose agenda today extends beyond simple methods of making oneself heard. The digital world and the social is buzzing with information, both genuine and fake, and discerning real motives behind the information has never been so daunting a task. Hence, the learning and unlearning will need to go hand in hand for communication to be relevant and, more importantly, credible. It is really my misfortune to be introducing the session with so much pessimism. But I do believe that our very distinguished panel, who I am virtually connected to this evening, will give us a glimpse of the future and how traditional communication will seamlessly fuse with innovation. While our very learned and experienced panel need very little introduction, nonetheless, it's my pleasant duty to bring them over to our stage with a few words about them. My first guest of the evening is Shreya Krishnan. Shreya is a senior vice president and head of marketing and communication at Anviti Insurance Brokers. She is an acknowledged CSR specialist and a corporate grooming consultant. She's on the advisory boards of several commercial organizations and NGOs. A multi talented personality, Shreya dabbles in activism, dance, theatre, poetry, blogging, modeling, and acting. She considers herself an earth warrior and is an event anchor and trainer. If I understand right, Shreya was a participant at the Miss India Universe pageant in the gold category in 2017. She has also recently co-authored a book with another CSR consultant, Jayasintha Jayachandran, titled Words Matter: The Language That Girls Need to Speak. Welcome, Shreya, and we definitely look forward to a useful interaction with you on this important subject, which hopes to explore PR and communication strategies beginning 2021, when the entire world will take greater initiatives towards controlling and removing the impact of novel coronavirus. My
Thank you so
second,
much.
thank you, Shreya. My second guest of the evening is Sri Gagan Chaturvedi. Good evening, Mr. Chaturvedi. Gagan Chaturvedi is a 1988 batch officer of the Indian Ordnance Factory Service, an alumnus of Hindu College, and a postgraduate from Delhi University. He has served in various capacities in the ordnance factories in Tamil Nadu, in Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, and West Bengal, handling large industrial population in diverse technological and cultural environments, and has held responsibilities in varied areas such as administration, HRM, industrial relations, legal production, industrial safety, and public relations. He is currently posted as Deputy Director General, beg your pardon, of Corporate Communications and Human Resource Development. Good evening, Mr. Chaturvedi. My next guest of the evening is Rahil Zahedi. Rahil Zahedi is the Senior Manager Corporate Communications, Asia Pacific, FIS. Rahil has extensive cross-functional leadership experience across public relations functions with prominence in PR activities, traditional and digital, corporate communications, public affairs, new business development, marketing operations, crisis management, and team building. Welcome, Rahil, to this very important discussion. We hope your role in new business development, besides communication and public affairs, will give us a look into what bodes for the future in these difficult times. Hello, Rahil.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now, please allow me to welcome Payal Sengupta, my next guest of the evening. Payal Sengupta is a communication specialist and has been with the MSL Group since 2006. Presently, she is working as a group head and is leading MSL operations in Kolkata and Eastern India. Prior to her latest assignment, she worked as an account director at MSL Bangalore for 4 years, including a short stint with the group in Japan for an internal mobility program. Her formative years in communication were spent in a BTL firm, Theme Ventures, and as an internal communicator of Peerless Hospitals, both at Kolkata. Hello, Payal. Welcome you to this evening's program. I am certainly looking forward to your take on the possibilities that communication industry holds for the future, which is significantly altered by the pandemic. Finally, and certainly not least, I have the pleasure to welcome Anindita Sarkar. Anindita is a senior consultant at Archetype India and has experience of more than 10 years in public relations and communication industry. She has been actively involved in tech and IT industry, telecom, and electronic systems design and manufacturing, besides lifestyle and entertainment. In her earlier essay, Anindita worked with leading agencies such as Burson Marsteller and Perfect Relations. She also had the opportunity to work in-house with Kolkata-based APJ Group. A warm welcome to you, Anindita, and we hope to see you give us some very imaginative insights into the future of communication as we enter an extremely crucial phase in the history of mankind. Thank you all once again. It was indeed a pleasure to introduce all of you to our viewers on our VR platform, which is accessible through the Engage landing page on our website, Facebook Live, and YouTube. The panel, ladies and gentlemen, will be with us for about 90 minutes. Some simple rules we will follow. I will invite each speaker to hold forth for 12 minutes. Thereafter, we will delve into a Q&A during which we will take a few questions and from the floor as well as from the audiences, if any. Finally, if we still have time, we could listen to all our speakers for maybe 2-3 minutes for their final observations. That would more or less complete our engagement for the evening. Thank you very much. Now, may I invite Shreya to kickstart the proceedings. Shreya, please.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes,
I've heard that that's the most popular line of the year because that's perhaps what's been used the most. So let me walk you through some of the things that have changed in the last 8 months. Let's be real, let's be kind, and let's understand the fact that the world is no more what it was. Human touch is no more what exists. Everything has become business-like. Transactions are happening a lot more in a virtual world. So the question that we come to is where is the fun? Where is the human touch? Where is the human interaction? In a virtual world where nobody has time other than to manage their phones and their timelines and their meetings, what happens to the fun that used to be had? Yes, before COVID 19, everybody was on their phone, but people were having fun. They were sharing things. WhatsApp was a medium for conversations that were actually triggering thoughts and ideas and ideals. But right now, we live in a world where the pandemic has been largely catalytic in a change, and that change has to be looked at from a far deeper perspective. It is heard today that apparently 2020 is the time that for the first time in the history of the world, there are more man made things than there are natural things as built by nature. That makes you want to sit back and think. That makes you want to sit back and also realize that when there are voices that are drowned because of the pandemic, people are expecting brands to show up. When governments fail, when people fail to speak up for the voices of those unspoken, brands are expected to stand up and take that space. And brands today have an opportunity like no other. So let's remind everybody about some of those changes that COVID-19 has led to. Nobody really reads anymore. I don't think any of us have read long form content in a really long time, which brings your attention to the focus that videos are a lot more going popular going forward, and video content is going to be the future. Now, we've always said that video content is going to be the future, but we also live in a juxtaposing world of the fact that we've always, as India, been an inherently print specific, print oriented world. In our world, print continues to exist. In our world, print continued to thrive. But COVID 19 has changed that. With the number of pages in newspapers coming down to the number of magazines that are being read and the readership that's failing, there is no clear answer. Is earned coverage now really something that's possible? That's something for all of us to think about. In a print dominated world, as the COVID 19 reality hits us perhaps a lot more intensely than we anticipated for it, print stories have to be looked at from a new point of view. The reality is the pandemic has changed the dynamic. And coming down the ladder, what we need to look at is the fact that media houses have shut down, journalists have lost jobs. So, how are we going to evaluate results? How are we going to measure in the new normal or the new better or whatever it is that you call it? Let's remember that there are some things that don't change no matter what the dynamic is, and those things are credibility and reach. The fact that credible organizations continue to thrive, the fact that credible brands continue to be a voice of reason, are ways and measures of telling you what communications in 2021 could look like. Now, let me remind you of the fact that the world has gone largely towards the video point of view. Whether it's Dalgona coffee or whether it's banana bread or whether it's Maldives being the new banana bread, the reality is everybody is sharing and video content has become a lot more popular. So there are some changes that we cannot choose to ignore. There are some changes that we cannot choose to let go of. That brings us to this point in time where we say, as brands, what can we do? We have to stop looking at things in a complex manner. Things are no more complex, and we cannot overcomplicate messaging. It shouldn't be taking time to get things done because in the world that we live in today, speed is everything that matters. So, as a brand, if you have said it first, and if you have been empathetic and kind and compassionate, and let me remind you, in the world of today, change is the most compelling factor as accelerated by compassion, kindness, and empathy. So, as we think of change in this context of compassion, kindness, and empathy, let's remember that there are things that we need to do to keep things simple. Remember that simple line that you used to say, KISS, keep it simple, silly. I think going back to that has a lot of merit. We shouldn't also remember that we shouldn't also remember what we've learned by rote learning, that whatever has worked so far will continue to work in the future. Every day is unlearning what you've learned and learning something new in the context of the times that we're moving with. And like they say, and I have said already, that change is important. Change is also the only constant. Your audience is really critical. Who is listening to you? What do they want from you? They're expecting something from you, and how can you address that and how you can cater to their needs. Everything that you're speaking to them needs attention and work because they're counting on you to be the solution and not a part of the problem. Now, what I'm saying may sound redundant and may sound cliche, but let's remember that people want to be a part of the solution. There are enough people that are part of the problem. So while 2020 has left many associations reeling and organizations uh, still trying to figure out the mechanics of the way forward, it doesn't have to be the case in 2021. 2021 is a year of opportunity, is a year of unlearning, is a year of adapting to change. A good communications plan that will align with your growth and strategy and purpose. And the reason I sort of try and dwell on purpose is the fact that if you're not linked to your purpose as a brand, you'll perhaps struggle in the world of 2021 because everybody in the audience is looking for that tie into the purpose that you sort of stand for and you embody. So, as a brand, don't rely on something that's unidimensional. Become a multiverse of connections, become a multiverse of conversations. So, as we go down this road of something that we're looking at as communication strategies in 2021, all I would like to remind you is the fact that simple things never fail. Being a part of this is always a plus, and the fact that connections and conversations can be driven despite what mode of or medium or message that you choose to take with you ahead. Internal communications trends in 2021 look somewhat like this. Business communication trends look at empowering frontline people through digital enablement because as you look and as you see the change that the world has shifted through, 50% of world travel may stop forever, but the fact that virtual conversations have become a lot more real and have become a lot more a part of our lives. Increased demand for operational communication is important because people want to know and they want to be in the now of things. Nobody has the time, effort, or energy to invest in something that is going to give you results only in the much forward future. So, how do you invest in conversations that are in the now? How do you invest in building transactions, in building people, in building teams, in building organizations that actually focus on how to get past the now to a future that's a lot more sustainable? Sustainability has come a lot more into conversations simply because of the fact that the world is reeling. And knowing also that COVID-19 is also perhaps an outset or a gradual outcome of the fact that we led those consumerist lives that we chose before these times. Corporate communication trends looking at AI, artificial intelligence, augmenting a lot of what transactional human transactions have been leading so far, which allows for the fact that jobs can change, job roles can change, people can actually spend time doing things that are intelligent and intellectual and drive the conversation from being very transactional, very forward thinking, future oriented conversations that actually, like I said, become a part of the solutioning and not a part of the problem. There's a lot more demand, there's a lot more desire for on demand content. And by that, I mean there are a lot of requirements for people to actually get together simply because the human touch is missing. Going and meeting somebody for coffee is no more a norm. So plan and align your communications with your overall strategy. Remember that purpose has to be the driving force. Work on how to make sure that your way of communication matches your strategic intent. And by that, I mean link up your purpose, your pillars of strength, your confidence, and the outcomes that you want to drive all together into one narrative. Plan your interventions because the more you want to reach out to people and the more you want to reach out to audiences, you want to know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and you want to connect those dots to actually build a compelling story that you can put out to them. Measure the outcomes because without measurement, nothing really stands long and stands tall. Communicate change because if there's one thing that we've realized in the last so many months is the fact that change is the only constant. Let's imagine and envision the future that is obviously going to entail as we walk through these months of whether the vaccine is coming or what is going to change in context of the vaccine. Work will clearly be fully digital because, like we've seen merit in a digital world, in a digital economy, we've also seen merit in the digital work world. Live stream goes mainstream. The more streaming of data that is happening, the more openings for live content is coming through. There are a lot of excuses that brands may be creating for the kind of content that they've built in the past that is passe. Communication tactics, especially those that we need in terms of looking at pipelines and in terms of linking revenues and actually tying the knot and seeking that seat at the table, have never been more real than now. So it's important that diversity, equality, equity, inclusion are part of walking the talk for all of these brands that are actually showcasing their value in terms of becoming more nuanced in their communication and sensitized to differences in people. The stakes rise for engagement. Brands are not at ease anymore when it comes to engagement that they're driving, whether it's through their people and their colleagues or through their audiences online on social platforms. So the reality is the fact that you're a one touch away has never been more poignant at a point in time than now. So the stakes are high, and the fact that work is going to get bifurcated is real. Repetitive tasks, functions are obviously going to move into a more AI driven, technology driven world where what value you bring to the table is going to be a lot more than the Excel sheet that you can. So, how is it that you can build and skill and also define competencies for people that are coming into the workforce in the new normal or in the new better? The fact that marketing and corporate communications will overlap, there's never been a better time for communication than now. The fact that marketing is going to be communication and communication is going to be marketing has never been more real than the point in time or the juncture in time that we're in. And let's remember, like I said, values are a lot more real than messaging. If you're building a message that is not built on your values or the value system that you stand for, remember the Drucker quote which said that, um, culture will eat strategy for breakfast, culture will eat strategy for lunch. That's going to be the new reality. The fact that you can drive better outcomes from values that you instill, whether it's in your communications or in your colleagues, is a lot more real than what was the reality before the point in time that we're in now. Use social platforms drive an influencer culture. as you see influencers rise not just on social platforms, but as bloggers, but as people who have a voice that want to share something, whether it's in context of a product, a service, or just in terms of the fact that they have an opinion that they want to voice and there are people to listen to them, is also changing. The nuances of old world influencer communication has shifted so much that today, when you look at influencer communications, it's all linking back to your marketing strategy. It's all linking back to what you want people to say about your brand. Innovation is never going to go out of style because that will still stay at the top of the spectrum. If you want to innovate, whatever you do in terms of your content or messaging or how you put your campaign out there is what is going to give you results. And those results are again going to be driven by what it is that you want to say at the core of the value system that you hold. So, with all of this, 2021 is also going to be a year where the use of technology accelerates at unprecedented levels. So, you will see CIOs, CMOs working, collaborating, coming together for various aspects of this journey that we're looking at in terms of whether it's a consumer or a colleague at the other end of the spectrum. So, what is it that we want to say when we look at communication strategies in 2021? We're still living through a global pandemic, and uncertainty is obviously as real as we were talking about when we said the VUCA world is going to be a new reality. But what it is that 2021 presents unique opportunities that can be leveraged, that can go far longer to tap into aspects of customer experience that are yet to be discovered. And with that, let me remind you the three simple things that I said as brands that are looking to build communication strategies in 2021. Just remain simple. Look at connections and conversations and how you can drive campaigns that can be the change. So, the three C's as I see it in a triangle. And of course, don't forget empathy, compassion, and inclusion, because beyond these existential questions lies the reality of the fact that brands can thrive to become that change that the globe and that their consumers want to see and be. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Shreya. That was a very sensitive refrain from you, and I'm sure I'm going to come back to when you get a chance. There were many things that you said, and perhaps that will need some elaboration at some point of time. But right now, we will go to our next speaker of the evening, and therefore, let me take the opportunity to um, call on. I think I have Mr. Chaturvedi, Mr. Gagan Chaturvedi. He is my next speaker for the evening, Mr. Chaturvedi. Uh, your views, your ideas on this subject.
Well, thank you. We've all just been through we are already in the pandemic. It isn't really over yet. And the disruption has been tremendous. The economic loss is being pegged at close to $11.5 trillion. And the disruption, there appears to be no end. So I just came across a very catchy sort of acronym which describes our world today. It's VUCA: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. That may be so. However, there's another discernible trend that there are less sharp breaks from the past and more an acceleration of trends that we were already witnessing. The pace of change has increased. And so in order to really fashion PR strategies for 2021, we've got to look at some of the discernible trends that have emerged, and by virtue of being accelerated, their impact is far greater today. Digitization, I won't really dwell much on digitization. It's all pervasive, whether it's shopping, it's education, entertainment, and health. However, there is a trend towards a concern for data privacy. Consumers want a digitally enriched experience, but they want to control who they share their data with. So that is a narrative which can be built by brands to assure people about the safety of their data. On the other hand, we have Shreya talked about the lack of human content and a human touch, and that is really something that is bothering people. So there is a niche market for people who would like to be tech free and would pay a premium amount for human contact. Now, that is another narrative that needs to be built, and these are areas where the corporate communications and the the brand values could then be built into a narrative which could drive revenue streams. Another trend that has emerged with work from home and remote working is it's very interesting that it's also a throwback on what was seen after the Reformation of Christendom. That is the elevation of family values and family intimacy. You see, families spend more time together. It's no longer the weekend family. It's no longer the commute. And therefore, the engagement with family activities, with the tenderness of family, that's another narrative that needs to be pushed. And there is a tremendous opportunity there. With work from home, it also impacts real estate, architecture, design of houses. You need more space. You need home offices, and all these things could, uh, impact not only businesses and the narrative that is built around them. Health is, of course, the primary concern because of the pandemic, and wellness and employee wellness and wellness of families would be pushed to the fore. Healthy homes, as I've just mentioned, is going to be a trend. Digitization of health is a reality. Almost 70% of health in the advanced economies has now been digitized. It's no longer a personal contact. So there again, data safety concerns and medical malpractice concerns would have to be allayed. Nutritious food is another thing which people during the pandemic have come to value. Organic food, food that is free from pesticides and herbicides. And there is a trend of urban marketing, urban farming, farming on terraces, farming in closed spaces, and which is anticipated to be a $290 billion industry by the middle of this decade. So these are all discernible trends and spaces for brands to really build their narrative, to push their presence. Another thing which we've seen during the lockdown and this pandemic has been the increase in mental health issues. And it is very unfortunate that none of our health insurance policies deal with mental health. There is one health tech startup that has just come up called Kenko, which is, I think, the only startup which also includes mental health in its bouquet of offerings. Now, depression was a reality. We all saw, the what havoc depression can cause, the kind of suicides it can lead, celebrity suicides and whatnot. Very interesting that a meditation app called Calm in the US was valued at acquired a $2 billion valuation during this period. So I'm talking about a growth in spirituality, a growth in reaching out to practices that lead to mental peace. That is another narrative that needs to be explored and needs to be taken forward. Because as the shrank from community to family, then the nuclear family, and now even the breakup of the nuclear family, and the sheer loneliness of people working remotely, this is a real issue that's going to concern us. Environment was another issue that was raised, and environmental concerns really came to the fore. We saw those touching pictures of leopards coming into residential areas and elephants walking on the beach, and then we realized that what really have we been doing to the world, and we also realized that we are actually quite irrelevant. The world can function quite well without us. There's also, because of the decrease in traffic and decrease in oil consumption, there was a 7% decrease in carbon emissions during this period. Global warming became a major issue. The trend towards clean energy was accelerated. So all these would could lead to the focus of consumers on sustainability and environment. As an example, I'd like to offer, Unilever, which has a campaign, Sustainable Living for All, has seen a 69% growth in the sustainable products in its portfolio, and 75% of the revenues come from sustainable products. So this is a trend that's going to go forward, and again, it's there for brands to, build a narrative based on their core values and connect with consumers. Some other interesting trends are that there's going to be likely to be more consumer backlash to insensitive companies. There's a Deloitte survey that's just come out that says that 79% of the responders could recall brands that responded positively to consumers, to communities, and to their workforce. And 1 in 4 customers were willing to walk away from brands that had a negative sort of image. 20% of the responders were willing to shift purchase decisions based on brand image. So consumers want to see brands that stand for values, that connect to genuine social concerns. And if they don't, at least the millennials and the Gen Zs are going to walk away and close their purses. So that's going to be another trend. Another interesting statistic I came across was that globally, companies are budgeting 30% of their ad spend on loyalty and retention of customers. So that's customers are up for grabs if you can have a narrative which can connect better with them, because people are willing to work with their feet and willing to open their purses for brands which are perceived as sensitive. Now, there's two rather major things which Shreya, of course, dwelt on, and I'd like to, just expand further. Two global trends in consumer behavior there's been a shift to a social enterprise. That the profit motive has to be seen in conjunction with societal impact. And a survey of CEOs listed impact on society, the impact of income inequality, diversity, and environment as the most important measures of success in the world to come. So consumers would be looking at these values, and it is up to us to reorient our brands, to re-emphasize core values, and to build narratives in more innovative media, in more innovative forms, to connect with consumers who are looking at this. Another global trend is that consumers are looking to big companies to solve social problems. Because with the breakup of families, with the breakup of traditional society, increasingly people have been left to either the market or government, and both of them, really provide imperfect solutions to social problems. So consumers are going to be looking to companies to come out and address genuine social problems and concerns. The same Deloitte survey, reveals that only 13% of the responders really listed the shareholders as the most important stakeholders in a company, and were listed community and talent far higher than shareholders. So this is what we are looking at. We are looking at purposive brands who not only espouse a certain purpose on paper, but exist for that purpose, live and breathe that purpose, and that purpose permeates each and every activity which they undertake. We are looking at genuine environmental concerns. We're looking at some very human issues which hark back to an earlier period: family values, spirituality, mental peace, those kind of things. And it is really up to the corporate communication specialists to capitalize on them and to allay genuine concerns and to help brands walk the talk and actually deliver on these issues. That is profitable. Now, video content certainly, and you have shrinking attention spans. There has been some kind of a sort of observation and some kind of a study which says that today's attention span, human attention span, is about 7 seconds. It's less than that of a goldfish. I really don't know how you measure the attention span of a goldfish. But then, yeah, shrinking attention spans, enriched visual content, and the sheer information overload which we have to exist under, it would be difficult to find a space and a visibility in this chaos. And therein lies the real challenge, connecting with core human values and sustaining visibility of the brand to drive a positive image based on sustainability, environment, genuine social issues, and addressing concerns thrown up by new technology, job losses, and data privacy. These are some of the areas which corporate communication specialists would have to address, and the communication would become more digital, of course. However, I would not really subscribe to the death of print media. I mean, if you notice during the lockdown,
Uh,
uh, there are a number of authors who used to bring out only one novel a year, global bestsellers, who brought out two. John Grisham, for instance, Vince Flynn, Brad Thor. These are global bestsellers of thrillers who brought out two novels during the lockdown. Ken Follett brought out a 1,000-page novel during the lockdown, and these are all best-selling authors, who dominated this space for the last 3 decades. So I really don't see the decline of print media, and it would really be a sad day. I'm still reminded of Steven Spielberg's speech, when he accepted the Oscar, and he says that a nation of writers requires a nation of readers first. So unless we read, what are we really, going in for? And okay, magazines might decline, newspapers might decline, but what about LinkedIn posts? What about blog articles? They're set to explode. So print and writing would certainly survive in a newer form. At least I'm an old timer, so maybe I really hope so. And I think that given the kind of trends we see in the novels and in the bestseller industry, it's not likely to decline. So thank you very much. I've tried to put some of my
no,
thoughts in front of you, and I hope
thank
I
you.
have. I hope I'll be successful in stimulating some kind of discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chaturvedi. You have been very precise in your thoughts. Well, I think perhaps when Shreya talked about print media, we were probably talking more about the printed paper than online. Yeah, the paper thing is declining definitely, but online will continue. And yes, a lot of things you said. I wish we could, but we will take up these small issues. We will probably when we get some time later today. But now I shall move over to Rahil for his discourse, and this is not necessarily in any order. I am just picking up names. So, Rahil, the stage is all yours now, and can you please enlighten us?
Thank you, Subhash, and I'd like to thank PRSI for inviting me to this panel. And it's great to hear Shreya and Gagan sir speaking largely about the industry at large. While I think the most important fact is how the PR ecosystem has changed so far. When I say PR ecosystem, the most important thing is when this pandemic had hit, nobody knew that our PR team, which is such a close-knit team, used to stay around and used to be together all the time, and it was such a close team, kind of fell apart, and they started working virtually. It also brings to the question of how we could adapt these changes at a quicker amount of time. While we were adapting to the changes, the companies that we associated, be it the client side or maybe the agency side, were expecting us to come up with solution because there was lack of communication happening. And at this point of time, what was really important for everyone is to know as much information as they can in order to develop some of the content stories and also see where the company is doing. And it was very, I would say, a tense time when you could see some of the Twitter and Facebook conversation where you had employees having concerns. So I think there were two things that really worked. And whenever a crisis like this comes across, the first line of defense is always the PR team, which has a host of standard responses to come after and communicate as much as they can. While this happened, the team was parallelly developing the entire ecosystem, and the agencies moved virtually. The PR team moved virtually. I will particularly talk about the client side. Now, with this, what really happened is at that point in time, we had to be very optimistic of what the future holds for us. When I say the future holds for us is you never know when this pandemic is going to end. So having that ecosystem created virtually was a key to the success of all the businesses and everything. What has really brought out is the creativity in the PR profession every time. Whenever there's a crisis, the creativity comes into effect. What used to be a kind of a simple thing became much more complex. When I say it became complex, is a normal team meeting would not encourage a journalist to come on board. Like they would prefer face to face. But even journalists started coming virtually because this the government wanted to do that because of the lockdown imposed and the restrictions. Press events, which were like used to happen virtually for global events, started happening for local events also. You could see a press conference happening. You could see media roundtables happening on Teams and Zoom or other classified platform where you could come up with this. So all of them started having over a time. When Shreya pointed out of the conversation of moving from print to digital, but it also meant there was a lot of content. Now everybody would not read everything. So your headline, your messaging has to be so crisp that everybody, it caters to the audience of what he or she wants to read. So it's very important of how we go out to the market and put out a message. And it could be a positive thing, and it could also bring something a negative impact to the brand as well. So it's very important how we go out and communicate itself. Now this has been a year where we have adapted to so many things, and people moving out virtually, but it also brought a lot of challenges. What happens when everything is going to be back? Well, there is more of a spoiler alert. Things are never going to be the same again what it used to. We might not be back to office because we've made ourselves so comfortable virtually that this might not be the case of coming into the picture of going to offices and having waiting in traffic jams for a long. People have become more comfortable virtually. That's for sure. Now it also brings the fact that if we are distant so much, how engaged we are on day to day and real time subjects. Now, today, if I have to do an event, I can do it virtually. There are so many webinars, so many podcasts, and if I have to cater to the audience, I need to be very precise on what I'm communicating because at one point of time, there is so many events that is happening. To grab the attention of the audience, you have to be very specific what they want so that they are part of our webinar or podcast or any of the events that we conduct. Now, since everybody has moved to more of a virtual setup, how are you going to make it more compelling? Now, if you call someone for a Teams meeting, it looks like a normal, you're having a meeting, it looks like a normal meeting. But the moment you add that branding and everything, it becomes more of a personalized experience. Like even if we do a roundtable. So if tomorrow, if we're doing an event, it has to have a more personalized experience. Hey, I am coming to a PRSI event because of the branding, of the messaging and everything that entails. So I have a limited amount of time to convince my audience, but in that limited amount of time, we have to be very crisp as what the messaging is going to be like, right? So that's the thing. Now, moving on to the digital setup, people, like Shreya said, people would not like to read much. So these concepts of podcasts, which not used to be a lot of popular few days back, but now people want to listen more. People want more of a visual content. So having those important things is still going to be continuing for 2021 because those who are more inclined towards print, often if you talk to our agency people, client have been very, I would say, prescriptive of what they want. So if they want a print coverage, they want a print coverage. But now that has changed. It has moved to a digital platform. There is podcast. There is so many other events that you could, so many other mediums that you could actually engage with the audience. Now, it has also given birth to a lot of creative angles as well. Now, if I'm viewing a news, I might not want to read it, But maybe if I put on my headphones, I would have a setup which says, all right, you may read the audio, and that audio could be something that you could hear at one point of time. So it's changing. The world is changing, and it continues to be more innovative over time. Now that is from an external perspective. From an internal perspective, is when you have large organization of nearly 50,000 people, it's important what you communicate to your employee, because there is always an uncertainty what your job is going to hold next for you, whether it's going to be layoff and stuff. People start panicking. So if you want to remove that panic from them, it's important for you to communicate and communicate effectively. Like there are time to time where they shouldn't feel left out, like while they're sitting at home. uh, and everybody, because humans are very emotional, they need some of a human touch, and element of face-to-face conversation. And that, but since the pandemic and it is more of a communicable thing, it doesn't make sense of having people every time in their offices, but you need to communicate with them time to time. It is the fact that what you share with your employees at one point of time, if there are thousands of mail that comes to your inbox, but what really concerns me, something, the headline, the everything, is it has to be very precise on what we talk about and what we communicate to the employee. This also brings us to the question that what is the concern of the employees and stuff. Now, what has been a challenge that we used to do virtual events previously. Now, at this point of time, which is the holiday festive season, there are teams who go outside for lunches and other meetings as well. Now, from an internal setup, that's kind of gone, because there is no element of face-to-face interaction. What can really happen right now is, while the employees might not feel very much connected to them, we could do virtual dinners and virtual drinks over the phone. You can always sit down, like we are having. I can just pick up my Coke and you can enjoy your drink virtually. But ultimately, we're having a conversation, we're having food, we're having everything that used to happen on a regular setup. So, even from an internal perspective, we need to be very creative in how we engage with our employees, how we engage with them time to time. So that's going to be the focus, especially for large organizations and also for small organizations which are very much close knitted. So yeah, I am very optimistic for 2021, and as I said, PR are like the first line of defense, and they have to be creative all the time. And the the even the most challenging thing is an opportunity for PR professionals. So to all young people, what I really urge is go out to the market, think innovatively, come up with creative solutions, because that's going to work. That's what's going to work for everyone.
Thank you so much, Rahul. It was very, very precise. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that how has the PR ecosystem changed? That was very important for us to understand, because otherwise, as when we started this conversation, I was talking about that we do the same. We say the same things. We have to essentially say the same things, but how do we say it? That has become so important in this environment, and this environment is going to last for a little long, but it will not last forever. So. Quite a few of us would like to go back to the usual, and then already you see signs of that. People want to go back to usual, but yes, we will probably have a much more of a hybrid system as we go ahead. So with that, can I please, I would like to invite Payal as my next guest for the evening. Payal, your comments on this very, I think it has become quite interesting and intricate by now, with so many issues have come up. So now we would like to hear you, Payal, please.
Sure, sir. Firstly, I would like to thank PRSI and you, Ms. Mohanty, for the kind introduction. Yes, I mean, it's been a difficult year overall, from personal losses within family to job losses, salary cuts in the professional world, mental depression. Each one of us are surviving in a very challenging ecosystem, as Rahil has, rightly said. So, this kind of situation mankind has never witnessed before. I think the word unprecedented has been used and abused a number of times. Yes, we are living in a disrupted world. So PR is at the center and will be at the center of this, since business has been impacted worldwide, and business is at crossroads. So whether the organization is like, kind of internal or external, whatever be the communication, PR professionals need to brace up for 2021. So, what I would like to first say is what have been some of the lessons, learning lessons in 2020 for the PR professionals. So, I think the other panelists have already kind of covered the challenges that are there. So, I'll just quickly, kind of in a nutshell, say that the major learning lesson has been that. Change is the constant. So there has been so much of change that has prevailed due to the pandemic. So that has been something that's constant. And of course, the second learning lesson is that there's rapid transformation. So these two have been the main learning lessons, not just for us, but maybe for the entire world. So, taking a cue from these two learning lessons, I think we should plan the go ahead. The path for 2021. So, when change is constant, I think the primary thing that we should do is we need to be very flexible. So, adapting to the changing scenario, flexibility is something that each and every organization, each and every brand has to practice. So we have also witnessed that, quite a bit. So, for example, the hospitality sector. So, take for example the five-star hotels, which have started with home delivery. So even in real estate, so someone who was offering only rental space is offering now co-working space, because rentals have become so very expensive. Affordability issues are there. A person, a real estate developer who has been selling an apartment, has made sure that there's a study room, when he's selling in the package, because work from home needs has is utmost now currently. So basically, the business, if you have to survive, you have to be flexible. um, Coming to the next learning lesson, which is like rapid transformation, I think we really need to be very, very resilient. When I say resilient, it is in terms of people, it is in terms of the workforce. um, how cognizant are we of the surroundings, how cognizant are we of the business setup, where it is leading to. So all these things are something that builds into resilience. And of course, brands are these days dealing with a much conscious and aware consumer or the target audience. So any false or fake claims, by a brand or by a company, will definitely not work with the consumer. So a resilient consumer also can see through it. So whether be it a video campaign, be it an ad campaign, or even if it is just a digital campaign, you have to be, the brand's integrity has to show. So, take for example the recent honey adulteration issue. So, all these things show that you have to be very resilient. Moving on to the next part, which I think some of the developments again, which have shaped or which are likely to shape the PR strategies for 2021. I think already we have touched upon the some of the points. So the startup ecosystem is going to change. So when I say the startup ecosystem is going to change, what I mean is that there's going to be very cautious and very safe investments. So investors, the venture capitalists, they are going to be extremely cautious where they are going to invest. So if I'm going to have a startup, then I need to double triple my efforts in attracting capital. Secondly, in terms of accessing the global the workforce, I think again we are at crossroads, because I think yesterday in the PRSI session only, Mr. Madan Bahal, as he was saying that it's an open world now. It's not just limited to one town or one city. The workforce is actually global. So definitely that is also going to change majorly the ecosystem. Thirdly, I think there are some of the sectors that have already prospered and are looking up. One is, of course, the ed tech uh, platforms, the co-working platforms, as I said, the fintech platforms, even wellness. We have already discussed about the healthcare and the wellness platforms earlier. Our panelists have already spoken about it. The OTT, the entertainment and the news consumption platforms, and of course, e-commerce delivery. So, in the startup ecosystem, I think these have been some of the major players or some of the major sectors that have really seen the change, and they have ushered in, lot of movement. Secondly, the development that is going to shape up the PR strategy for 2021, I feel, is a consumer shopping trend. So when I say consumer shopping trend, what I mean is that already you have a very aware and conscious consumer base. So as I said, you cannot take them for a ride. The second thing is that they have increased reliability on healthcare experts. So, wellness, healthcare, these are some of the fields that have come up and are much talked about, part of each and every conversation these days, as we can see. So, the reliability on healthcare experts, be it allopathy, homeopathy, Unani, Ayurvedic, whatever it is, people's reliability on those healthcare experts have increased manyfold. And of course that can shape up the consumer shopping trend as well. So if you are a player in that category, then of course you have very very good prospect. The second one is a fine blend of physical and virtual shopping experiences. So when we say that it's a blend of physical and virtual, what we mean is that of course people are mostly shopping on e-commerce platforms these days, virtual shopping, uh, but in 2021 you never know, a shopper might land up at your home. If a five-star hotel is delivering food at your doorstep, then why not a shopper, maybe an apparel maker, lands up at your doorstep and takes you through or shows you his collection. So these are the some of the kind of the shopping trends that might change, that might shape up accordingly. The PR strategies need to be evolved. um, Thirdly, what I think is that there's a long term ROI involved. End of the day, whatever we do, there's everything is connected to the ROI. So uh, it is going to be very essential that whatever strategy we are coming up with, it is linked to an ROI. So as you know, ROI can be measured through different tools. It can be qualitative, it can be quantitative, there can be social listening, there can be media monitoring. Whatever it is, measuring the ROI will be very very crucial for any PR strategist. Fourthly is of course crisis. Taking example from this current pandemic, I think being prepared, preempting, or predicting that such a situation or a pandemic that might again come up and throw everything off gear, or we get into a lockdown situation. So this is a huge huge learning for any brand, and we should be prepared to face such kind of crisis. And last but not the least, I think the development that that has shaped up the PR strategy and will affect 2021 strategy is the paid route of the media. So as you know, most of the media have gone the media net way, which is by the Times Group. So initially this was brought in by Times, and now I think we can see major media houses moving to the paid route. So definitely that affects a PR strategy, because it's no more just the earned media. So a good PR strategy has to be a healthy mix of paid as well as earned and owned media. So I think these are some of the developments that will shape up the PR strategies in 2021. And coming to some of the essential elements for 2021. So what can be part of the strategy? So I think this monopoly of influencers is something that's going to be there. As you know, that's part of the digital. I won't spend much time on digital, but I feel that, be it lifestyle, be it hospitality, F&B, healthcare, these sectors are going to be dominated by influencers. So there's going to be monopoly of influencers, and each and every brand, each and every company, whatever be the business, product or service, they are going to rely on influencers. The second element of a PR strategy, I think, is going to be an omni-channel presence. So each and every brand will be having an omni-channel approach. Where you can increase the touch point with your target audience. So I think the last session
Yes,
PRSI had was on virtual reality as well as AR, VR versus AR. So that was very interesting to note, because I think with an omni-channel presence, virtual reality, geofencing, self checkout, interactive kiosks, so all these things will come into play, and the various touch points with the consumers is going to play a crucial role. So that again will shape up the PR strategy. Thirdly, I think the other panelists have also spoken about the kind of the connect with the brand, so which is actually sustainability. So if a brand is connected socially, so consumers would want to see a brand that's socially connected. So either you can address social issues or environmental issues or climatic changes, whatever it is, a brand really needs to be socially connected. Next is, of course, prevalence in the local language content. So basically, I want to cover three aspects in content. First and foremost is we are again moving from a global to a local kind of a setup. So here, local language content, be it for OTT platform, be it for news platforms, I think that is something that's gaining ground. So PR strategy has to be done keeping that on mind. The second aspect of the content is, of course, has to be relatable personal content. The audience should have a personal connect to it. And the third one is content backed by data and analytics. This is a much discussed topic, so I won't get into the details. So data and analytics, like you can really upgrade the quality of the content that you are giving out through your PR strategy. So yes, I think these are some of the very, very important elements of PR strategy for 2021, which any PR professional or communication professional should keep on mind.
thank you so much. I think you've also been very, very clear-headed about the future. A lot of uncertainties there, but you know how to go about it, which is a good thing. So before we, interact with each other, let me call upon our final speaker of the evening, Anindita. Anindita, we would like to hear you now.
Thank you. Uh, Firstly, I wanted to thank PRSI and you, Mr. Mohanty, for inviting me. Very enriching panel. I think I agree with all of them and all of you. Just 3 points that I wanted to sum up, I think. As a PR professional and as the next gen communicators, what we have to actually delve on is, how to make our message relevant. I think that is something that we have all stressed on. Gagan sir said that, we have an attention span less than a goldfish. So I think creating and crafting that message which is relevant to the media and which is relevant to your target audience is the need of the hour. Because why the entire change has happened. What we had in the beginning of January and what we have now has completely changed. So we are in the metamorphosis of change, and I think being present and being relevant is something that is the need of the hour. Second thing that I wanted to focus on is that, when we have to connect with our audience, we have to be persistent, something that they like. So nowadays, just to give an update and a quick snapshot, we have 31 languages in India, and we have 1 lakh plus newspapers, and we have 400 plus channels, news channels, and television channels. But this year, unprecedented downloads that happened over the OTT platform was around 44%, which is more than any other forms of media that has happened in the past few years. So I think LinkedIn Plus, Flipboard, InShots is something that has come through, and I think both brands and communicators have realized that, the next normal is going to be something where we need to be relevant with our message and be persistent. And the third thing I wanted to say is that we have to be flexible, which Pyle has, of course, said. And I think agility also, flexibility with agility is something as a communicator we need to do and we need to practice. I just want to touch on this and say that, if we can encompass all this, I think that what will set the stage for 2021. And I think I'll leave the floor for more discussions, sir.
Thank you. I think you were very precise. You said a lot of things in your 3 sentences, but we will go ahead. I mean, yeah, in the last few minutes that we have, I don't know if you have any questions on the floor. I haven't seen any yet, but if there is, if it comes, we will try and get these answers from you. One thing which came through to my mind was, I think all of you touched on that in some way or the other, is that we have revisited human values, which is it's something which should have been coming to us normally, but now we have put a premium on it now. It's really, it really sounds more valuable than it ever has been, and that's very important. And maybe it needed the nature to actually hit us so much that we have to go back to that reality, that we had lost touch with human beings, lost touch with human values. And this is all what you talked about, and as becoming the narrative in the next, in the next PR exercise, in the next communication exercise, that we have to actually become sensitive, and we actually have to look to being able to uh, connect with people with our hearts, perhaps not so much with our minds we've been doing, but with our hearts maybe. So it is interesting, and it's probably the compulsion, the inevitability, which has that we are talking about human values after a very, very long time. It's a pleasant one, it's a sad one, but it's a pleasant one for me. And so some of the things that we talked about, I think I had a couple of questions which was building in my mind while I was listening to all of you, and you all spoke so very competently that I am at a loss to find anything in that, to how to ask you a question. I'm not very sure, but there was one thing we talked about, engagement with brands. I think Shreya spoke about that, and engagement with brands. I mean, what is the new thing that will actually happen? You see, there are one or two things which we talked about that in this context. I had just one small thing, maybe it's a little bit of a diversion, but digression, I mean. You know there is this distinct feeling that we have lost touch with something called loyalty. I just want to give one small example of mobile companies. We use mobile. We are either prepaid users or we are postpaid users. Okay, when you're a prepaid user, there are lots of options available to you, and you can keep changing, and companies come after you, and every company calls you up and says, I'm going to give you a better deal. But people are silent on postpaid guys, because they are loyal, they are with them. I have been loyal with Vodafone for 22 years. I have not got a concession ever. Every time I missed a payment, I had to pay 100 rupees more. So this is something which I find something which is not there in the communication, not there in the brands. So is there going to be some change now? Again, since we are talking about, we are trying to peep into people's houses, because everyone is ensconced in their homes now. They can't get out of that, at least for a while. And so we have to reach them, and we have to somehow reach them and keep selling things which they may want to avoid. There are some unavoidable stuff which they will buy, but what I want to avoid, can you sell that to me? And so how sensitive you have to be to this. If I would love to get an answer from all of you, because this is something that I'm very passionate about, and that's why I spoke about it, this loyalty thing.
So
Anybody?
I,
Yeah, yeah,
I think I'll go first because you spoke
yeah,
about
please.
engagement, because you spoke about
Yes, yes,
value.
yes, please do.
I think
Please
as
do.
we speak about brand values and what brands stand for and what brands can actually communicate, I think there is a massive lacuna because of the fact that a lot of people that we look up to in terms of government or politics are failing us. So when there's that lacuna, people look for brands to stand up and speak up, and brands have to also stand for values that they stand for that have to resonate with people. So I think loyalty doesn't really come with what you've been buying or quality as much. Yes, quality is important, yes, the product or service is important, but brand loyalty comes in when you can cross beyond that transaction and actually go and touch a feeling or an emotion. There's this beautiful line which says, they may not remember you by what you said, but they will remember you by what you made them feel. What is it that the brand can make somebody feel? What is that emotion that they can capture? There may be brands you've never bought from that have really touched you. And you may be loyal to those brands and you may recommend those brands simply because of the fact that it has touched you in a way that you perhaps didn't even understand that something could be as transactional as a consumer and provider relationship could actually translate into something a lot larger. So I think that lacuna is what brands should look at addressing, because all said and done, you made a very strong point of saying people are buying, and people are buying so much, people buying a lot more than what they need. But if a brand can be conscious, if a brand can actually instill a value and actually journey through that course of saying, I will lead a more sustainable life, and I will also ensure my consumers become more sensitized to leading a sustainable life, can go a lot longer in today's context of the world that we're in than a brand that says, buy from me all the time and buy aimlessly or buy mindlessly.
Yeah, true, absolutely. I mean, that probably makes the communicators job more a much more responsible one, because after all, brands or products, everyone would be looking to a communication that has to be relevant, and that has to come from us. I quite agree with you when you said yes, loyalty is not a big factor today, simply because we have a choice. Today we have a lots of choice. So therefore, even if you're buying a soap, when I used to go, I know as a kid, I've heard my father telling some, "Ek Lux leke aao." He never said anything else, because probably never saw another soap ever, because he didn't go to the market. So, but today you go and you look at the shelf and you find beautiful colors all over the place, and you make a choice. So obviously, one thing is being loyal because of a type of product, you're used to it, or the quality that you like, you enjoy the quality, and therefore you are loyal. But now again, there is a competition. There are people who can give you equally good products, and price is also a consideration. We have become a price sensitive market. So obviously loyalty has taken a backseat, but you feel little sensitive about that. When you are actually patronizing a particular product, you want some, that values that you talked about, somebody caring about you and saying that, thank you very much for being with me. That's very important. Rahil, would you like to respond to this one?
I'll just say, how the brands have changed so far. Now, the thing is that, you're talking about a mall setup. When I step inside a mall, I see a plethora of competitive products, giving the same sort of services. Like every brand has been very open about the fact that, my brand is the best and I'm going to do, and this is, if you talk about soap, it gives this percentage of germs and everything. Now, the fact is that when it comes to choosing the brand, apart from loyalty, the other thing is there has to be a well researched platform. Now, this is where marketing as well as communication work hand in hand, right? If I go inside the mall, I know if I enter a mall, there has to be a specific product that's there. But is it something that really attract the audience? Because every, if you look at, take it, I'll stick on the soap topic because everything has the same sort of image. It's just that what is the insight that the marketing agencies give you about customer sentiments? Apart from loyalty, you should also look at multiple factors. Pricing is important. You talk about the best offers, the best discounts. You talk about the availability. Like, for example, if you're offering a lot of discounts at one point of time, and the next moment you don't see that product on the shelf, it kinds of a waste of a program, right? So, the supply has to be met with the demand. Moreover, the pricing has to be competitive that you even survive in the market as well as that. So, it's not about how loyalty is going to matter a lot. It's about what customers want. So, you need to go to the customer time to time regularly to understand what exactly do they want. Because, the mall setup might not be the factor. Like, even if you want to buy groceries, there are so many other apps and so many other options. For every product, there is so much of classified platform that you can buy different products from. So it depends how well researched you are and how much of information you're gathering from the customers. The sample size might differ if you do a survey, but more or less it kinds of predicts the same amount of customer sentiment. Even if that might change, but you might not get 10 out of 10 points, but you might get 7 factors what is really determining customer buying preference. So yes, at this point of time, it's important to go hand in hand with multiple stakeholders because everybody is being competitive to understand what the consumer wants given the uncertain time.
Thank you, Ryan. It's good. Now we are virtually running out of time, but I want a very quick, short response from all of you on just two things. One is we were talking about the sensitivity that returning to the market, the becoming sensitive to human beings, which we should always have been, but we are talking about it now. That's one point which I want to talk about, and because now we are increasingly using the virtual or the digital world for many of our transactions. So therefore, security is a concern which everyone is addressing. Technologically, we hear a lot of things, but as communicators, how do we respond to that? Can I go with Gagan sir first? Very quickly.
Well, cyber security and security of data, I already touched on, is something which is a grave concern. Uh, Today, in the more developed markets, people are even thinking in terms of getting a financial compensation for the data they share. So brands are going to have to develop a connect with customers where you give an enriched experience, an enriched digital experience, but at the same time you give the individual a choice on the amount and the nature and with whom that data can be shared.
Right.
And you have to allay that anxiety. You have to convince him that he doesn't become a product, because today when we think in terms of the big technology companies, we're actually the product. Our data is being sold, our data is being analyzed, and we are, all kinds of things are being pushed at us. And even when we don't want something, as Shreya said, we're being forced to buy things we really
Yes.
don't want.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes.
just
True.
another point I wanted to make about the loyalty issue, which you raised. I mean, loyalty today is not a given. That the connect has to be renewed, and it has to be renewed in ever shortening cycles by the brand. Unless you see, the one of the issues I raised was that 30% of ad spends globally in 21 are directed at retention and loyalty. So loyalty
So
is
maybe
really.
we have touched upon the same Scott, maybe because we are in almost in the same age group. So maybe we are talking more about that. Can I move to Anindita? Anindita, I
Again,
want your views on these things that please give
yeah.
me your quick views.
Sure. So what I think the pandemic has actually led to to is empathy. I think empathy is one word that I've seen across everything. And I think how brands will, be more empathetic towards their consumers is something that everybody has realized. And as communicators and as leaders and also as colleagues, we have to have that, empathy in leadership. Like, that has come through very strongly. And I think that is going to go a long way. The third thing I want to say is, we are also talking about AI and empathy. So it has gone as far as brands declaring that, how AI should be made more empathetic. So I think that will go a long way, for being the
Chat
next
boxes.
thing in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And about security, I think my fellow panelist rightly pointed out. One more thing that I just wanted to add is I think as individuals, we need to be knowing what are our limitations and what we can share. And also as companies, I think they have also to come forward and, make those things which is relevant and which can be shared without misusing our trust, I think.
Thank you. And perhaps Pyle will have the last word for the evening.
Sure. So the thing is that regarding customer loyalty, since you started with the Vodafone, you being a loyal customer of Vodafone for so many years. So yes, of course. I mean, the market leaders are no more sure about brand loyalty. Look at the case of Nokia. I mean, how many Nokia users have shifted to Samsung and Apple? So brand loyalty really goes until unless you are being able to establish a sensitivity kind of a connect. So pandemic has really given us that kind of opportunity where as a brand you can probably go back and get your consumers so that they remember that okay, this is a mobile brand that I use, and this mobile brand during the pandemic had probably what gone ahead to rural India and given free handsets to a lot of rural children. So maybe those are the kind of connects that a brand needs to make in order to retain loyalty.
Thank you. I think so. Perhaps all of us agree today that thanks to pandemic, we are becoming more human. So I hope these values continue, and we will go through a lot of difficulties, trying times for the next. I don't know. It's so difficult to conjecture whether it's 6 months or a year or 2 years. Nobody knows. But perhaps after that, we will see some better times. So thank you very much, all of you. You all were extremely good today, and I really had a very enjoyable time listening to all of you. And I hope we will be able to interact more in the future. Perhaps our platforms will glow longer to reach you out. Even later on with some more programs. And since we are so intrinsically close to the subject of communication, it will always be very, very important for us to keep in touch with you all and talk to you all and get to know the new things that are happening. Thank you very much for being here, spending this time with us. And some of you, I want to thank you because most of you came at very short notice, which is actually wonderful. And how do I thank you all? Thanks a lot for the evening. And for me, it was a personal learning for me. A lot of you gave me a lot of thoughts to ponder over. And good night to all of you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
So much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Lovely e-meeting virtually, all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a lovely
Have a
evening.
lovely
Thanks.
evening, everyone.
and
Bye bye.
good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Bye
Bye.
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 Huge and beautiful campus. A lot to explore, a lot to experiment, a lot to learn. 100% placement. Explore more, learn more, and play more. Best faculties we have here.
I'm proud to be part of Adamas University.
তাই আজই নিজেকে রেজিস্টার করো অ্যাডামাস ইউনিভার্সিটির অ্যাডমিশন টেস্টে।